Hello and welcome to another edition of Meet the Manager. My name is Joe and here I chat to an FPL manager with a stellar track record of success. We find out about their strategies for a good finish in a campaign and what lessons they've learned over the years. Joining me is Utkarsh Dalmia, who is known on social media as Zofar666. He is also a member of Fantasy Football Scouts Pro Pundit team. Utkarsh, how are you?
Doing good, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks so much for joining me. I do like doing these Meet the Manager interviews because I always find I learn a lot as well, especially when, and we're going to come to this in a second. Actually, can we start again? Hang on a sec.
No,
Let's start
sure.
again. I just realised I got the wrong picture up on the screen. That's
No
right.
problem at all.
Good. Well, that's a good little practice, isn't it? I'm just going to write down. So 52 seconds. I'll just keep it running. Okay. Hello and welcome to another edition of Meet the Manager. My name is Joe and here I chat to an FPL manager with a stellar track record of success. We find out about their strategies for a good finish and what lessons they've learned over the years. Joining me is Utkarsh Dalmia, who is known on social media as Zofar666. He is also a member of Fantasy Football Scouts Pro Pundit team. Utkarsh, how are you?
Doing great, Joe. Functioning on minimal sleep. The Chelsea Arsenal game actually finished at about 4 a.m.
Oh
over
my
here.
God. Well,
So
it's
bit
good
of work.
because it's as we're currently recording at the moment. It's in the evening. You're based in south of India as well, so that's I guess something that you as an FPL manager, with the matches kicking off here at 12:30, 3 o'clock in the evening, you got to deal with the time zones as well.
Yep.
So
Yep.
another challenge. I do like these interviews because I find I learn a lot as well. So I hope others do, especially when we meet a manager like yourselves with quite a number of top finishes. Now I know you don't really talk a lot about your top finishes, but I will anyway. So
Thank you.
we'll have a look at your career and then I can ask you some questions about it. As
Sure.
people can see, you finished in the top 10,007 times and 6 of those have been in the top 5,000. And of course, your best finish is that marvellous 2010-11 season where you were 17th in the world as well. Before we look at the rest of your career, I'm just interested about that 17th placing. Was that the highest you got to that season, or were you like second and slipped back to 17? What happened that season?
Well, the season really started off with a bang. Being a Chelsea fan, I always have an affinity towards picking Chelsea players. So the previous season was when Chelsea had won the league. Ancelotti was blowing out teams 8-0. So I started the season with Drogba, Malouda, and Ashley Cole, despite us losing the Community Shield before that. So Drogba was yellow flagged for that first game against West Brom. So I still captained him. And I think the combined 3 players got me 60 points over the next 2 fixtures. I think we won against Wigan 6-0
Yeah.
in
Oh
the second
yes.
fixture as well. So I was in the top 50 in game week 2.
Wow. Okay. So yeah,
So
that's
it
the
was
start
really
we'll dream of, isn't it?
exactly. So from there, it was quite easy. I never really dropped out of the top 100 at any point.
Okay, you say it was quite easy. Now this is interesting because a lot's going through an FPL manager's mind when they're that high up in the rankings. It's like, oh, I don't want to drop down too much. So is there a tendency when you're that high up to play it safe, hope others around you make a mistake, or do you play your own game? And yeah, how do you play it differently, being that high up the rankings for the whole season?
The thing is, that was actually just my second season. The first season when I started, my team had Palacios and whatnot, Lucas Leiva. So I was just I really didn't have the fear factor, I would say, probably that I do now.
Ah,
There was very limited social media interaction. I was just probably 1 or 2 people I interacted with. So there was absolutely no element of fear. And I actually spent much less time on deciding my transfers I did then compared to I do now.
okay. Do you
So
do you think we might all perhaps be better off if we did play in a kind of isolated fashion like that, make our decisions, don't look and worry about what other people are doing? Do you think that might help now?
I think to a certain extent it would, because there's so much noise out there, especially today ever since I think like the official FPL account started, there's awareness, the talk about FPL. Like I think back then when I started, maybe 2 or 3 of my friends played. Now it's closer to 200.
Right.
So anytime I go to the gym, we meet up with friends for drinks, the topic of FPL is always first. So there's a bit of more of pressure
Yeah.
I would guess, to like, among the social group to do well, to do better. And for me now, having had these past rankings, it's always like, every move. If I do a bad move, then I'm pretty much the butt of the jokes
Right.
for that you make.
So
So
is that the
there's
thing?
definitely more pressure.
Because looking at your track record, just before we look at some of your strategies, just looking at those rankings as well. So there's an amazing run of high ranking finishes in the season from when you started, really, 2009. And then 2016 to 2018, and sort of where we are now. So the last three campaigns, obviously these are still really great finishes, really. Top 10, 20,000, top 30,000. But do you think that reflects what you were talking about there, about how the game has changed? There's lots of noise.
I think the game has changed overall, as in the football has changed from 3 years ago. And I think the main reason for it is the TV deal.
Okay.
With all these teams now having a lot more money to spend now, rotation wasn't really an issue back then. You had the likes of Lampard, Ivanovic, Terry, Nani, Rooney. They'd play every game if they were fit. I think maybe due to the demands nowadays on players in terms of pressing, new tactics, it means that the more players need to rest. So you need to play more deeper squads. And what has also happened now, I think there are way more heavy hitters. Back in the day, you could have pretty much all the big guys. You could have your Van Persies, your Suarez, your Torres. Now you have 8 to 9 heavy hitters, and the variance is so high.
Yeah.
Like if you're on the wrong heavy hitters, you could be like 50, 60 points behind.
Exactly.
Or 50, 60 ahead, like Aguero for the past 2 weeks, an example. So my problem is I'm perhaps too patient and too loyal to my picks.
Okay.
If I see somebody is good, he's been performing on especially the eye test stats, I'll stick with him. I don't really switch between my heavy hitters as often as I probably should.
Yeah.
I haven't adapted as that. And Guardiola is really my nemesis.
Yes, he is. It's because, I mean, you were talking about that rotation being a factor, and of course that's synonymous with Guardiola. We never really know who's going to be on his team sheet. There was a deadline last night, and still we didn't really know who was going to play. And sure enough, Aguero was benched, but we didn't know that. We didn't know beforehand. And it's just going to carry on like that until he moves on to another league, perhaps. But I think that's a good indication of how the game has changed and how us as FPL managers need to adapt slightly. How do you think you can adapt to that? Is it simply a case of being a little less patient and a bit quicker with the transfers?
That's what I've been trying to do with them, but it's not really my style. It doesn't really work for me. A lot of the times the moves I make, I feel I've been chased points quite a few times this season. So it's very difficult now to distinguish between points that have gone and points that are coming. Like is it points chasing or is it points potential? A good example being Mahrez.
Yeah.
After the Aston Villa game, I looked at him. He has good stats on paper, upcoming fixtures. Pep talks him up in the press conference. Mahrez has an eye for goal, benches him.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's best laid plans. I mean, you were talking about. I mean, I suppose that's, I guess, a golden rule of try and figure out the holy grail of trying to figure out FPL is trying to assess if getting in a player is chasing points or it's actually accumulating points.
Precisely.
So let's move on to strategies for success. So lots of good finishes there. What for you are the key strategies you use to try and get as high finish as you can?
Sure, I'll just walk you through some of them. Okay. For me, primarily, I look at Fantasy Premier League as a game of probability. What we're doing really is positioning ourselves in the most probable position to get returns. So what I look at bookies odds a lot. Every week at beginning of the season, I try to get, because I don't do this for a living. There are bookies out there who do this for a living. So I'd like to get the information from people who are professionals. So that leads me to my next point. I always bet on the big teams, the title chasers. So because the big teams have the best odds. You see, week in, week out, Man City, Liverpool, they're the best for the clean sheet. So I try to identify at the start of every season which 2 or 3 teams would be chasing for the title. So, and then I try to build my core around these teams, around 5 to 6 players. Then I look at the next tier of teams, your Everton, Wolves, Leicester. And I try to avoid looking like, in the basement.
So is that a case of when you're looking at the teams, I was just going back to that point there, when you're looking at those teams, for some of us, when I start off, pre-game week one, I would perhaps look at, well, I want, a couple of heavy hitters. I want a couple of mid-price players. I want a couple of budget players. I'm not actually looking at the team. I'm looking at sort of how much they cost and how they fit in. But do you look at it differently? So, for example, you could get a team that you think could do well. So let's pretend Chelsea are title contenders this season. But nevertheless, most of their players are 6, 7, 8, 7.5 million. So you would look at it that way. Would you look at it that way instead of price points? You look at it in terms of team title contender points.
No, I'm actually quite rigid on structure as well.
Oh, okay.
As I'll walk you through. So basically, those players will be fill in the blanks first. So I'll get to that now. The next point I was talking about is now captaincy.
Yeah.
Now, captaincy is the one rule I really dislike in FPL because I think it has the highest variance and luck factor attached to it. So what I used to do in the past, I used to pretty much stick with one captain pretty much throughout the season. I started my first season with Lampard, perma-cap. Then it was Van Persie for about 3 years, Suarez for a year, Aguero under Pellegrini, Mancini, Salah in his debut season. Just captain these players irrespective of who they're playing, where they're playing. So, because many times you see these like Van Persie would get a haul against United, against Chelsea, etc., etc. So just trust the player. But the problem I'm having now is I really can't identify any one player in the league who I can trust with the armband week in, week out. So all I've been doing this season is oscillating between Sterling and Salah. So and that hasn't really worked for me.
No.
And I'm not a guy who punts on captain at all. I prefer going for like a big ownership, low risk captain.
So do you think that strategy ordinarily would work? It just so happens that because we have that, going back to the start, that choice of captainable players, there's 5, 6, 7, 8 of them each week. So is it that you think you perhaps need to be more flexible with the captaincy, or you want to stick to a couple, you just got the wrong couple, and it should in fact be, for example, maybe Mane and Aguero or something like that?
It's interesting you mentioned Mane. I haven't captained Mane once this season.
Okay.
Despite owning him since game week 8, because maybe it's a comfort feeling. These players like Salah in the past have delivered for me. So whenever it comes to Liverpool, good home fixture, I'd always lean towards Salah. Even if I see Mane and Sterling have 2 good fixtures, I'd rather go with Sterling because he delivered for me in the past. But I think by far this season, Sterling has been the one who's disappointed me in terms of captaincy. I'll explain that later on as they made a note of when he's really done what.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking in terms of say for a player like Sterling. So obviously you have patience, you've got loyalty to these players, and also because you've been playing for a number of years and been successful for a number of years, you've wanted to stick by a certain player. But now, for example, with Sterling, is he now a player that you'll look to avoid either for the captaincy or for just to have in your team?
Absolutely. I got rid of Sterling, I think, a few 7 or 8 weeks ago, and it's been the best move I made. I think I've spread the cash around. And recently, I think I've captained Vardy for 7 or 8 weeks running when he has his run. Because that goes back to the same principle. A player in form who's delivering every week, just trust them because you will eventually get one haul somewhere along the way.
You mentioned about structure is important to you as well. So, tell us about that.
So I work a lot with investments. So for me, asset mobility and diversity is very important. So my typical structure, if I could just walk you through it, I go with your 4.5 goalkeeper, never more than that. But I actually spend a lot in defense. I always go for 3 heavy hitters from the top sides. So in the past, these have been your Ivanovic, your Zabaletas, your Evras, your Vidic. So it's a 7.0 defender, 6.5 and a 6. So I don't really trust the smaller teams in terms of clean sheets on a consistent basis. And then the other 2 defenders are 2 4.5 guys who rotate home and away. So in case one of the big guys misses out, you always have one guy with a decent fixture to sub on.
Yeah.
Then in midfield, you have a 12.5 mid, in this case like a Salah, etc. A 9.5 mid, 7.5 mid, and a 6.5 with a 4.5 cheapie.
Okay.
So that pretty much gives me access to all price points in and out with one transfer. So then we go to forwards, 12 mil, 8.5 and 6.5.
And once again, same principle, you've got access to all those points. Now, that's exactly the type of system that I use as well. I do like price points. It's easier to make a move. You can avoid taking hits because you can easily get that player in. So, for example, myself this week, Ings out, Haller in. I don't know points-wise it'll do, but price-wise I could do it easily.
Exactly.
But, however, now I've found, when I play that system, I found slight flaws with it sometimes, and I feel I could get better from it. So, for example, owning Salah and Mane got the world chess champion Magnus Carlsen to the top a while back. It's hopefully going to do lots of people proud at the moment for a double game week. Do you think, is there room for flexibility with your structure system?
I actually didn't start with this structure this season. So I started with Robertson, Trent, Dean, and Zinchenko.
Oh, okay.
And then went with Sterling, Salah, Perez, and I think Frazier. So it still maintains the price points to a certain extent, but shuffles them around back and forth. And with Jota and Wilson up front, very template. But what has happened really, I think this season what's more different is of the cheap defenders. Your Lundstroms, your Ricos, your Kellys, your Targets. They're delivering points, and so there's really a lot of value in defense. And the big teams aren't keeping clean sheets.
So is the trick...
you look at the likes...
I was going to say, so the trick is to that structure, that price point structure, is to make sure that it's flexible, that you're constantly moving with trends throughout the season, for example.
Exactly. And I'm a bit slow with that. I'm not a person who's very adaptable to change naturally.
Okay.
So it's not very easy for me to do it. And I think I've always been behind the 8 ball this season because of that. But it's a good learning experience. But that being said, I don't necessarily know if it's a learning experience because I don't know if it will be replicated again in the future. Because in the past, you see, even Arsenal, they were good for 12, 14 clean sheets. Chelsea, 12, 15 clean sheets. City, Liverpool, you could trust the big teams. But you have a look now, this Chelsea are all over the place defensively. So are Arsenal, so are Tottenham. So maybe it's more of an anomaly. So I try to keep that in mind as well.
It's like I guess it's something like reverting to the mean, that old phrase, and that traditionally Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool keep clean sheets. So at some point they're going to go back to doing that if they're conceding a lot. We're seeing that at the moment with Liverpool. For those
exactly.
We're in the 2019-20 season at the moment, and Liverpool had a dire start to the season in terms of clean sheets. Now they're absolutely falling over themselves for clean sheets. So it's about that adaptability there. What else? What other strategies have you got for success?
For me, statistics play a big part of my decision making. I have blind faith in players. If a player's posting good statistics, I'm willing to stick to them through blanks. But on the other side of that, if I see a player's not posting very good underlying numbers, like Vardy earlier in the season, he was converting a very high percentage of his shots. Similar with Ings. I don't really rush to buy those players very often. So again, that's when I've been left behind.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. One of the questions was about hits and your attitude to risk as well. So you've taken 5 this season, and one of those was a double hit. But is that sort of normal? I'm guessing with price points, you hopefully, in theory, should be avoiding lots of hits. But what's your sort of tally at the end of a typical season in terms of hits?
I mean, I'm naturally a very risk-averse individual. My day-to-day works involves a lot of risk evaluation, investment evaluation, and by nature, I always go for the safe, low-risk, low-return almost. So, but on one time, in fact, I'm quite keen on taking a hit is when I have 2 free transfers. So all but one of my hits have involved is it's like a mini wild card with 2 free transfers. The one hit I did take without was for Tammy Abraham. We had just sold him after the hip injury. Then we got early team news he was starting versus Everton. And when it comes to Chelsea, often heart rules overhead for me.
I mean, this warms my heart. This conversation as a manager who, I mean, I'm going to use the word dullard here because,
It's a fair one.
but I like it. I mean, I use that as well because you're playing probabilities, aren't you? You're trying to reduce the element of risk
Precisely.
and trying to play the numbers there to make sure that you can get the best return you can. Well, that's the theory, anyway. Just before we move on to your current campaign, really, is there anything else you wanted to say just in general about your career and any particular strategies? I was thinking more when it goes wrong, perhaps.
I mean, again, I really don't know exactly what's gone wrong this season. I think I've owned the right players, but at the wrong times. Like, for example, Trent and Robertson, when I owned them, I think I got 2 clean sheets. It was one away at Burnley, one away to Sheffield. I remember Trent was posting numbers with 10 chances created, 2 shots every week, but no assists or returns at that point of time. So probably that, and I think too much faith in Sterling and Man City. I think I've put a lot of faith in Man City this season after the performances last year. And like I said, Pep, can't live with him, can't live without him.
Yeah.
I try at certain points, ignored Sterling, etc. Last year, they're too rotation prone. Sterling goes and gets 20 points. So damned if you do, damned if you don't with Pep, really.
Do you think, though, given the length of the career and the amount of top finishes that you've had, that it might be dangerous for you to change your strategy too much? So, for example, start captaining, quite differential captains each week and making rash transfers and early transfers, those types of things. Do you think it would be dangerous to make that, or do you think that there's still room in your game to tweak what you do?
I look at FPL largely as a game of luck, primarily. And I do realize the luck aspect of it because I'm not on the pitch scoring the goals. I'm not on the pitch stopping the goals. So I don't really get too upset with if I'm too lagging behind or anything. So I just play how I usually like to play. I don't let, the way if I have a good or a bad game week determine, my mood. So to a very large extent, I've been quite content. I've been just slipping down the rankings slowly. Probably I should have started punting on players with lower ownership a bit earlier on. But I'll give you an example. In terms of captaincy, I still can't punt on somebody unknown. Like last week, I think we had Vardy and KDB as popular options. Yeah. So I went with Salah.
Oh.
So that is a sword, but you can't say at any point taking a punt on Salah is a risk.
So for you, that's a low risk move.
Precisely.
For me, as a disheartened Vardy captain of that particular week, he got 0 points, by the way. I think it would have seemed a risky move, but for you, obviously, it's still within your strategy, low risk.
Precisely. And I believe in evaluating the decision, not the outcome. Let's say I sold Pope for a hit for McCarthy, I think the week before when he saved Vardy's penalty.
Yeah.
Now, the underlying statistics pointed towards Burnley slipping downwards, Southampton going upwards, but nobody can really predict that Pope's going to save a penalty.
Yeah.
So there's no point beating yourself up about that. The decision was, I think, the right decision on paper, just that the outcome hasn't really justified it.
I think that's an important point because lots of people do get quite upset when they've had a bad game week as well. But if you can start off that game week doing your research, and if the luck of the game doesn't fall your way, well, you can't really beat yourself up. If you make a wrong decision, for example, if you captain Pope every week, then you've all got yourself to blame if you just do that.
Right.
Let's look at your current campaign. It's a sort of a snapshot, really. So as I said before, we're in the middle of the 2019-2020 season. Liverpool are riding high and they have a double game week as well. So let's just have a look at your team. Game week 24, which you're in the middle of at the moment. It's going to go on for another week or so. Quite a long game week, this one. But just as a snapshot, really, of where you are. So you got McCarthy and McGovern as your goalkeepers. McCarthy starting, obviously. You've got Kelly, Sionchu and Alexander-Arnold at the back in a 3-5-2 at the moment, with De Bruyne, Grealish, Mahrez, Mane and Salah. And Salah's your triple captain as well. Mane vice-captain, triple captain. Greenwood up top and Vardy. And then you've got Ings on the bench, but I'm presuming that's because you thought he might be benched this week.
Yep.
And then you've got Rico and Lundstrom. So I guess what that's showing is that the flexibility of price points. There's a lot of good cheap defenders this season. You've got them. You don't.
Yep.
There's no need to spend so much in defence because the cheap ones are doing that job. Up front, you've got a flexible 5-man midfield, which could, with some transfers, become a 3-4-3 quite easily. But just tell us about. I mean, that's my interpretation of your team. But yeah, just tell us why you've got that set up at the moment.
Mane and Salah, I think, goes back to what I was talking about, the title chasers. I think Liverpool are clear, far and ahead, the title favourites. So I wanted to make sure I have their 3 top scoring assets. Mm-hmm. And it's helped that I got Mane at like a low price of 11.6. So it's allowed me to accommodate. I got De Bruyne at 9.5. Mm-hmm. So it's helped me accommodate them all together. Grealish at 5.9. So, but there's also a problem with this. I'm also very attached to the players because of these price points. So there's definitely a negative to that. Mm-hmm. Like Vardy, for example, I got at 9.
Yeah. Well, yes, he's in a different price point now. He's sort of nearish Aubameyang's price point, for example, who this season is is currently 10.8. I think it is 10.7, something like that. So I guess it's that flexibility. Greenwood, for example, is cheap, but he is a doable striker you can play. He's very playable at the moment because currently Marcus Rashford is nursing a long-term injury. So in theory, he should get more minutes as well. Your triple captaincy, why did you use your triple captaincy now?
Triple captaincy has actually been difficult for me after the whole Sane debacle.
Yeah.
So it's always one I'd like to get out of the way. And I've been waiting to triple captain Mo Salah since he's joined the league. Mm-hmm. So, and it's actually a good option because if you look at his ownership relative to Mane, I think it's about 1/3 in terms of EO. So, I mean, Salah is potentially a solid triple captain.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think he is.
I couldn't pass that up.
Yeah, I mean, the effective ownership of Mane at the moment is well over 100%, and Salah is just under 100%. So yeah, just a bit more of a sword than a shield. You got Mahrez in. You spoke about him. The underlying stats said that, but also about Guardiola and how he likes to rotate. And in a way, that's what's really scuppered Mahrez over the last couple of seasons, as Nas says. He's always looked great. And he always he often scores when he gets minutes. Why did you go for a player like Mahrez? He sounds like a high-risk player for such a low-risk manager. Why him?
I mean, it's again going against my better judgment. I needed to find differentials. So what's been happening is I've been getting slow green arrows of 50k, 100k, move up 300k places, then 1 week you get a big red down all the way 300. Yeah. So I've been trying to find differentials which I can use. So, and I'm honestly not very good at that. That's not my forte.
No.
So maybe I read his comments before his press conference saying that Mahrez is eye for goal. He's one of our key players right now. And obviously there's a nostalgia factor from the Leicester season where he was very good for me. So, and I actually sold Martial for him. There's another thing I have I really don't trust United at all.
Okay.
Under Solskjaer.
Yeah.
So I was just looking for an excuse to get rid of Martial as well.
Yeah.
So I figured Mahrez could.
Yeah, no, I can see why you would do that. Martial is a high-risk player because he's, over the years, has been... I'd say it's not so much injury prone. We just don't quite know whether he's going to be fit enough to play, and that's almost worse than being out. He's almost on the cusp of being in the team and then not. Also looking at the rest of your team going forward there, so we've got some blanks coming up, no doubt. More double game weeks coming up. Your second wild card to play, other chips to play. So what's your immediate thoughts about from game week 25 onwards?
I've actually managed to save a free transfer. This week I was actually considering Kelly to Williams, but Shaw being fit and Solskjaer calling him the best left back in the world sort of put me off. I figured I could use that money to get someone like a Lascelles or a Stephens rather down the line, who I know is going to play irrespective. So my main strategy now is I would need some clarity on the Carling Cup regarding which teams are going to blank in 28. I'm pretty sure that Man City was going to blank, which is going to mean Arsenal blanks. But I really don't know what's going to happen with Villa and Leicester because that tie is at 1-1. So that will shape a lot of my transfer decisions because I'm pretty overexposed. I have Villa assets. I have Leicester players. So I really need to know how that's going to go.
You mentioned about Mahrez, about looking for differentials. It's not really your game, you were saying, looking for those like high risk differential players. Now you just mentioned Lascelles, who's like a nailed on. He's captain for Newcastle. I think he's still captain for Newcastle, and he should be nailed on. Newcastle have some quite good fixtures and can get clean sheets as well. So that's a good example of you playing your game and highlighting a player, a cheap player, but a player that could do. Are there any other players down the line that you're looking at thinking, they're a Ukash kind of player, I want them?
See, my problem is I can't really ever look at a player like a buy player for just the sake of him being a differential. I look at the player and I think, is he going to score me points? Does he have good fixtures? Does he have good numbers? If he does, get him in, irrespective of his ownership, whether it's low or high.
Yeah.
So I don't really look at that aspect at all. Maybe something I need to do at my current rank more.
Yeah,
and it's really the thing.
No, I was going to say it's interesting because it takes you out of your comfort zone, and I guess that's what we all have to do as FPL managers,
exactly.
Time to time. It's quite tricky. Is there anything else you wanted to add about your current squad? Because you're currently around 700k or 800k at the moment. Obviously, not where you want to be. Have you been around that point before? I say that because you haven't finished any season anywhere near that. But have you been at that point at any point in other seasons, and how have you got out of it before?
I was about, I think, 800k a couple of seasons ago. I think that was the year Harry Kane got his 7 goals at the last 2 games. So I was at about, I think, 800k around game week 17, 18. So, but I didn't really change my game. I just put my faith in Chelsea. I had triple Chelsea. Conte was dominating the league that season. And just made different picks. I think, for example, in defense, Baines was a popular choice. Instead of going for him, I went for Coleman. So maybe distinguish on some. So they're differentiated to a certain extent, but they're still very safe picks in terms of pedigree. So I didn't really do much different. I think the double game weeks for me that season were very kind. I think we had Kane got 30 odd, something like that. So I didn't really do much different there.
I think what it sounds like is when you stick to the way you play, and just be patient and hope as well, and hope that strategy works out. More often than not, it does. I mean, I guess there's going to be the odd season where it doesn't. But so, for example, that season you're talking about there, you finished at 16,000. How many people are going to be watching this thinking, I'm 800,000. I'm probably going to finish there. And then you come along and say, actually, 16,000 finish is very, very likely if you stick to a particular strategy. But it sounds like your strategy has been successful. It's obvious it has been as well, and I hope it is this season as well. So I just want to say good luck with this season, and let's see if we can get another high finish again. Just before we go, anything else you wanted to add for our viewers and listeners?
Nothing. Pleasure. Thanks for having me on board. Very happy to be a part of this. I would enjoy the series a lot.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us, and I've got a lot out for that, especially how to fine tune that Dullard manager style that everyone should go for, maybe.
At this point now, I'm just pretty much going to wing it, have fun, see where it goes. Good. Because I don't really I don't get too down. It ends with what it is. Next year's a new year. Take it as it comes.
That's a fitting way to end. Utkarsh, thanks so much for joining me, and goodbye.
Pleasure, Joe. Thank you.